Another place nearby that the Islamic world kind of touched or had an influence on. What do you think? India. All right, so let's go to India. Okay, what region would we say India is?
South Asia.
South Asia. Very good. South Asia. So again, we're still kind of working on the Muslim theme. Okay, we're talking about how this is significant. Now, not everything that we're going to say out of South Asia at this time is going to have absolute everything to do with Islam, but a lot of it, obviously is. So let's go ahead and I think, let's see here, we had a couple of things that dealt with this, maybe not. Let's go to, where are we here? I'm going to try to bring up things that you have kind of seen before. Just to kind of trigger your math. All right, who has the best hour? 1, 3, 5, or 7? 5. 3. I heard 7 first.
3.
Let's see how 7 did. I don't know if this is all that good.
7 is garbage.
7 is garbage here. Okay, so we got a lot of stuff on here, but at least it kind of helps us maybe see something that we've sort of seen before. All right, so let's kind of zoom in on South Asia and talk about, maybe first and foremost, let's talk about the influence of Islam, all right, in South Asia. Obviously, if there's anything about India or South Asia, the arrival of Islam into South Asia is going to be, again, by what vehicle, by what process? By trade, right? So something that we maybe want to sort of start with is that the Indian Ocean is going to be the arrival, basically, of Islam through trade, okay? Let's put something else on the list as far as specifics goes. Let's put the very first thing, actually, for South Asia in terms of an empire. Let's go ahead on the top of the list and put down what's called the Sultanates of Delhi. Delhi. All right, now we got this pictured up over here. You guys remember talking about the Sultanate of Delhi up here in northern India? Kind of, sort of? Remember that at least concept? Here's what we basically said when we did this in chapter, so we had said this was chapter 16, I believe. What we had basically said about the arrival of Islam this far is that starting in about the 700s, Islamic, basically Arab Muslims, are going to start to spread it across the Indus River Valley, all right, into North India. We also have a group of Turkish-speaking people that actually form the Sultanate of Delhi. Those are the two first ways that it kind of gets to India. And then what is the last place, or the last way that it kind of gets there? So 2 routes by land, and the last routes by sea. Now, if Islam arrives in South Asia by sea, what parts of India did we say it would have largely come to? It's going to be coastal cities. So all of your coastal cities are going to be largely Islamic, as is basically your spot here of North India. So as far as like what we're putting down for India, why don't we put down Sultanate of Delhi first and foremost, just because that's that becomes an empire, that becomes a northern Indian, as we would say, Islamic empire. Okay, and why don't we just kind of just go beyond this and say the last couple of things about South Asia that we really want to say between 600 and 1450 is that South Asia is the center of really, really important trade routes. Okay, so everything going through the world here, right? And because Muslims are going to be the big traders at this time in the world, and because this is kind of the backyard for where Islam was created, the Indian Ocean is really going to be the hotbed of trade activity. Okay, you'll probably get thrown a question about monsoon winds. Okay, how we feel about monsoon winds? Easy. By the way, you answer that question pretty easily. All right, we got the whole concept that winds blow one direction one season, the other direction the other season. Point being, why do merchants and mariners like monsoon winds? What are they able to? Yeah, it's like, so they know what they're doing, reliability, travel fast, travel safe. It accomplishes obviously a lot of characteristics here, obviously, and it has a big influence here. Now, other than that, monsoon winds help out, the arrival and the spread of Islam through trade helps out. Let's also keep in mind, Islam also is going to spread into Southeast Asia, okay? We've got a city located right over here in Southeast Asia. I've got it labeled on there too, so we can totally see it. What is the name of the city here? Malacca. What is Malacca called today? Singapore. Okay, that becomes a heavy trading city and obviously a heavy Islamic city. And that was the really important place, remember, because people could levy the taxes and the fees and the tolls to pass through, have safe passage, basically connecting India over to China. So that's going to be kind of a significant part for us here as well. All right. So a couple other things we can maybe throw on here as well. Why don't we just put down monsoon winds? They never go away. I mean, you could put down monsoon winds for South Asia the entire time. You could put it down for the very first one you had. You could put monsoon winds down for much later. Monsoon winds don't change, obviously. There's not going to be a big a big shift in things. Okay. Let's see here. What else can we maybe say? What else can we say? All right. So we know that the north is the Sultanate of Delhi. We know there's monsoon winds. Let's also just say coastal cities are going to be very, very big for trade. All right. You guys remember maybe one of the most significant, I don't know if I have it pictured up there or not. What's the most important maybe Indian coastal city if we're talking about a trade city? This city called Cambay. Cambay, India, which located kind of on the western coast of India, becomes really, really significant as far as trade goes. Heavily Islamic city, as we had said, and a big part of our story. Okay. I mean, other stuff that's really staying part here in India. Obviously, we understand that we got the arrival of Islam, but a big chunk, obviously, of the rest of India is still going to be strongly Hindu. So we still do have that really strong Hindu presence. Now, it's just for the very first time, you got Hindus and Muslims kind of living side by side with the arrival, obviously, of the Islamic faith. Okay. What else? What else? Do you guys remember talking about the temple at Angkor Wat? Remember what that one looked like? It's in the middle of the jungle of Cambodia, and it's actually a Hindu temple. Once in a while they like to throw that out there. It's the middle of Cambodia, but what that sort of understands and what this is kind of all about, why don't we put this for our last concept here, is we're just going to put down the concept of what's called the Indianization. The Indianization of the Indian Ocean. All right, and that might sound kind of repetitive, all right, but what that kind of means is that really when you talk about the entire Indian Ocean world this time, it's being kind of influenced, obviously big time, by Indian culture. All right, and look at the different characteristics of Indian culture. One part is obviously now Islam. Another part of Indian culture, though, is still going to be Hinduism. So there's going to be aspects of Hinduism that spread about during this entire time frame as well. Guys, if you just understand the general concept that traders and people usually associated with religion are going to be very involved with spreading who and what they're all about, that's going to have a big influence not only on themselves, but obviously their neighbors here as well. Okay? So that's going to be kind of the big part there, I believe, as far as, as we would call it, the Indianization of the Indian Ocean region. Okay? All right, let's see here. What else do we have? We started with that Muslim theme. Is there any other stuff we maybe kind of want to go into next dealing with Muslims? I think we can maybe go. What's another, all right, what's maybe one other region on here? Let's look at one other quick region. Let's do one more of these and then just for another 5 or 10 minutes, so then we'll cut off for a break here real quick. Let's do one other quick region that also kind of has a heavy influence by Islam as well. It's not that that region itself is Islamic, but they come into contact with a lot of Muslims at this time. Can we think about another place that's going to have, in this particular era, as we say, we got the 4 M's, plus some other stuff, Byzantine Empire. What's going to be another region, if we're going to look at like Byzantine Empire maybe next, that we're going to say is going to have some influence? It's going to be Europe, right? It's going to be Europe. So, why don't we go ahead to Europe next? And kind of see what we can maybe put down for this. Okay? Now, a lot of stuff in Europe, as we say, it's going to have a little bit to do with Islam. A lot of it's going to be somewhat different here as well. First thing I'd like you guys to start, if we're taking a look at Europe, why don't we bring it up first by taking a look at something that they sometimes like to just throw into test questions from time to time. You guys remember taking a look at this cathedral before?
Is that a picture of legit or is it painted?
That's a painting. Yeah, that's a painting. You remember looking at this portrait before, though, right? In Europe, the Hagia Sophia, located in the city of Constantinople, right? This is probably the most epic Byzantine cathedral, as we would kind of say.
Is it
All right.
still standing there?
What's that?
Is it still standing?
It is still standing there today, and what is the transition we're going to say happens, though? It becomes so it's a Christian cathedral here, and then what happens to Constantinople, as we understand? It's taken over by the Muslims, taken over by the Ottomans, and this is turned into a mosque. All right, did you have that, Jack? All right, very good.
Wow, I'm proud of you, Jack.
We're all proud of you.
You learned so much.
All right. So why don't we kind of start this? Let's go to Europe, and like I said, we're going to try to make the connection between what this kind of has to do with other just kind of our general time frame here. So if we start in 600 in Europe at this time, and by the way, if you want to be kind of looking at your map, you can. If you look kind of like top left, some of the stuff is kind of all put down here. Europe in 600 is still kind of reeling from what big loss? What's the big like? Oh man, we're so upset that this happened, right? If you're a big Western European fan. the Roman Empire falls, right? You guys remember the year the Roman Empire falls?
476.
476, very good. So Roman Empire falls in 476. And what we say for Western Europe, so why don't we put this one first here. Western Europe, after the Roman Empire falls, what's the general time frame that it kind of devolves into? What do we call this? The Middle Ages. Okay? So this is kind of like M number 2. Now you're going to probably find that like you're not finding necessarily a lot of questions on the test on the Middle Ages. The M for Muslims is going to be a lot more significant, but at least kind of helps us put the proper time and place kind of together. So Western Europe kind of devolves into the Middle Ages. All right, so what are some characteristics you remember about the Middle Ages? Characteristics about society, about religion, in terms of how the economy worked. What was just life like in the Middle Ages? Yeah. Really no centralized government, no major centralized empire and stuff. What was the economic, social, political system that Europe had? That system called feudalism. So in Western Europe, we've got the Middle Ages, and maybe on the same line as well, if you got a little bit of room, put down feudalism as well. So we have devolved, we have broken down into feudalism. Okay? And as we say, remember feudalism now, that's the whole story with the knights and the lords and the kings and the castles and kind of like the, that explanation of things kind of from Western Europe. But the important thing to understand here is there's no real strong central government. Do you guys remember when we talked about feudalism, we kind of wrote Western Europe to look like this? Remember this graph we put up on the board? Remember what was like over here? The good stuff, the good times in Western Europe was what? Yeah, it was Rome, and some people say Greece too. So we have Greece, Rome, we had the Middle Ages, right? And then what was the way we came out of the Middle Ages with? We came out with the Renaissance. Okay? And we put down some characteristics, obviously, that we sort of see as like the downfall, I suppose we could say, on the Middle Ages themselves, like we had sort of talked about with feudalism. Okay? I think if we go back a little bit more here, let's just see. I remember talking about some of these things. This is more stuff with Byzantine Empire. Maybe this isn't what I'm looking for. No, not exactly. Oh well. We'll come back to these other things in just a second. Let's put some other stuff down for the Middle Ages, though. Or let's actually kind of move out of the Middle Ages to a certain degree and say that, all right, for Western Europe, yeah, the Western Europeans kind of are going through the Middle Ages, obviously, between about the year 500 and 1000 or 1200 or so. At the same time, while all of this stuff is happening, let's put down for Eastern Europe. Okay, so Western Europe's got the Middle Ages. Eastern Europe obviously has what empire happening at this time? Has the Byzantine Empire.
Isn't that just Eastern Rome?
And the Byzantine Empire, absolutely. Sometimes you'll just call it the Eastern Roman Empire. It's like Eastern Rome. Okay? So right there we've got the Eastern Roman Empire happening on the eastern side. Okay? So characteristics for the Byzantine Empire. As we had said, what's really significant about the Byzantine Empire? Well, number one, the Byzantine Empire really kind of like starts and stops with the city of Constantinople. Okay? Now remember, Constantinople was that was that city that had been, basically the capital switched from Rome to Constantinople in the 300s by the Roman Emperor Constantine. But the reason why you'll get questions on Constantinople, questions that might not all seem that difficult right now, questions that say something like, why was Constantinople such an important strategic city, right? And we would want to know something about how its location right between the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea, put it on important trade routes. It was a connecting city between East and West. If you were ever getting trade products from the East and getting them to the West, it went through Constantinople. So all of your major trade, your East-West trade, you want to get silk, spices, etc., from the other side of the world, you're getting it to and through the city of Constantinople. By the way, the major trade route, I know we haven't said this before, but it probably is worth mentioning, the major trade route that goes across Asia, stops off the Black Sea. A lot of silk is on it. The Silk Roads, right? Silk Roads basically end at that spot here as well. Okay? So, those are some of our characteristics, obviously, of the Byzantine Empire. You got to know something about the city of Constantinople, the significance there. The other stuff to kind of think about with the Byzantine Empire is, why don't we say something about religious differences, basically between East and West. And that's all kind of leading up to, if we saw the differences that sort of existed between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire in terms of Christianity, what did that all kind of lead up towards? What does that kind of get us into? Is what's called the Great Schism. And what happens with the Great Schism?
The Christian thing splits.
Christianity splits between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Western Roman Catholic Church. A lot of different reasons for it, as we kind of discussed
Is that the
before.
thing
but-
where like this, the beards?
That's the whole conflict over beards. It was over like the nature of whether or not you should have leavened bread. It was the nature over like who should be the proper church authority. Should it be the leader in Rome or should it be the leader in Constantinople? All of those characteristics kind of divide ourselves up between those two sides. Okay? So that's one way to look at it.